Hey guys, listen up, family. I want to have a serious conversation with you all today. Not a partisan conversation, not a Democrat versus Republican conversation, not a go vote and everything will be fixed conversation. I actually want to talk about power. Specifically, I want to talk about Black voting power. And I know that's very important. And I know that we often talk about that here at Provoking Perspectives. Because when most people hear the phrase voting rights, they think that the question is very simple. You walk into a polling place and simply just cast a regular ballot, right? But that is not the actual question here. The deeper question is this that I think we all should think about. Are you after you cast the ballot, does your vote actually carry a whole lot of power these days? Because Black people did not actually fight, you see. We actually marched, we actually bled, we actually organized, we got jailed and died just so that we can participate symbolically. Our people are actually fighting for representation. They were fighting for protection. They were fighting for the access to resources. They were also fighting for the ability to shape laws that shape our lives today. So, I want to ask you guys a very difficult question. Can Black people actually have voting rights on paper, but still lack voting in power? Lack voting power in their practice? That is the question that I want us to sit with. All right, kind of good it. I know. Hold on now, hold on. I want to actually understand what is happening today here when we go back. Because one of the biggest mistakes we make in politics is actually treating current events like they came out of nowhere. I mean, you guys act so freaking shocked sometimes. Like these things been here. They actually did it, truth be told. Black rights have always been connected to Black freedom. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction, newly freed Black men and women began participating in American democracy in ways that this country has never seen before. Like the 15th Amendment, actually ratified in 1870, extended voting rights to men regardless of their race, their color, or previous condition of servitude. The National Archives actually explains that before 1870, voting rights were not extended equally, and the 15th Amendment actually changed the constitutional landscape for Black male suffragists. And once Black men gained their voting rights, Black political power actually began to grow. Like we actually started seeing some real change here. Black people were elected to their local offices. The Black men actually served in state legislatures. Black men served in Congress. Black communities began using the political system to advocate for schools, protection, land, labor rights, and citizenship. So I want to be clear here that progress was not met with violent backlash. When Black people gained political power, white supremacist systems worked to destroy that very same power. I want to repeat, Black people actually gained political power here, and white supremacist systems worked to destroy that very same power. This is how we get to the end of our Reconstruction era. That is how we get to Jim Crow. That is how we get to poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, intimidation, racial terror, and organized voting suppression. So when people actually say, why do y'all always bring up history? Because guess what? History actually explains the pattern. The history is this. I want to set something clear. Whenever Black people gain political power, there is often a system created to limit, redirect, or neutralize that power. That is not an opinion, provokers. That is actually American history, you see. I know. I had to set it straight. I had to set it straight. So now let's sit here and talk about Jim Crow, because I know that's a thing as well. You see, Jim Crow was not just about separate water fountains and segregated schools like they like to teach us sometimes. Jim Crow was also a political system. It was designed to control who had power, who had representation, who had access, and who could actually influence government. You see, Black people were blocked from voting through poll taxes. They were blocked through literacy tests. They were blocked through intimidation. Black people were also blocked through violence. They were also blocked through local offices. And, whoever had the power decided who actually passed and who failed during that time. Like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was actually created to enforce the 15th Amendment and attack discriminatory voting practices that had been used to suppress Black voters. The National Archives actually identifies the Voting Rights Act as a simple legislation designed to enforce the 15th Amendment, and the House Historical Materials note that the law restricted literacy tests and other unfair voter qualifications. Now, this is where our teaching point begins. The goal of Jim Crow voter suppression was not simply used to stop individual Black people from voting. No, it wasn't. The goal was to stop Black communities from actually gaining that rich collective power that we once had. Because you see, when you control the vote, you actually those who control the vote actually control the policy. And when you control the policy, you control the resources, right? So keep up, come on. Keep up, y'all. When you control the resources, you control the schools, the housing, the roads, the policing, the courts, the hospital, the businesses opportunities, the community development, and so on. So voting has never been just about the ballot. Voting has actually been about who gets to shape our future today. Now, we cannot actually talk about voting rights here without actually talking about Selma. Now, all of this is serious, but Selma, my kind of topic. In 1965, activists actually marched from Selma to Montgomery because Black people in Alabama were being systemically blocked from voting. Hold on, guys. Hold on. All right. They were actually being systemically blocked from voting. The National Archives actually describes that the Selma marches protests against the systemic racist blocking of Black voting rights in the Jim Crow South, and notes that the marches became a watershed moment leading to the voting rights of 1965. Bloody Sunday actually happened on March 7th of 1965. Peaceful marchers were actually attacked as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They were not marching for symbolism. They were marching because Black people were being denied political power in places that they lived, worked, prayed, paid their taxes, raised their children, and also built their communities. And after Selma, the national pressure actually helped push the Voting Rights Act forward. I'm here to educate y'all. Cause y'all apparently, we don't have enough. So when we talk about voting rights today, we have to speak with respect. This is not a casual thing, provokers. This is actually blood history. This is sacrifice history. This is our organizing history. This is your Black church history. This is student movement history. This is the SNCC history. This is even your SCLC history. This is your local Black organizer history. And one of the biggest mistakes we can actually make is to inherit the rights that they fought for, but not inherit the responsibility that actually comes with them. Y'all ain't hearing me. One of the biggest mistakes we can make is to inherit the rights that they fought for, but not inherit the responsibility that comes with them. I need y'all to pay attention here because that is so freaking big, right? So here is where we have to be politically mature, right? You see, modern voter suppression does not always look like a literacy test. I'm going to bust you guys' bubble because it doesn't. It does not always look like somebody is standing in a doorway and say, hey, y'all come in, you can come and vote. Yes. It's not that. It's not somebody saying you cannot vote. Sometimes it looks legal. Sometimes it actually looks technical. Sometimes it looks like real paperwork. Sometimes it looks like court ruling. Sometimes it actually looks like a map. That is why we have to understand what exactly redistricting is. Redistricting is the process of drawing political district lines, like I mentioned in my last video. They draw the lines on paper, and I know that sounds boring, but do not let the boring language fool you, provokers. District lines help determine who gets elected in your communities. And above, district lines help you to determine which communities are actually represented here. District lines help to determine whether Black voters like you and me have a fair opportunity to elect candidates of our own choice. And when maps are simply drawn to weaken political strength of a racial group, that is called voters dilution. Let me make that plain right here. Voters dilution means you can technically vote, but the system is arranged in a way that weakens the impact of your votes. All right, y'all catching up with me? So you may have access to the ballot, but not equal access to the political power. That's what I keep saying here. Can Black people have voting rights on paper, but lack voting power in actual practice? Because if the answer is yes, then we cannot stop at telling people to vote. We have to teach our people how the power actually works. Hit me with it. We got to actually tell people that, y'all. We got to really let people know what's going on. Man, so, oh Lord. So hold on, y'all. I gotta get my breath. Got a little up there. Now, let's talk about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. You see, Section 2 is important because it is supposed to protect voters like you and me from voting practices that discriminate based on race. In simple terms, Section 2 actually helps challenge systems that weaken the voting strength of Black voters and other communities of color. And right now, Section 2 is actually at the center of many major legal battles, as we both know. In April 2026, the Supreme Court decided in the Louisiana versus Callis case, the Brennan Center actually reported that the court struck down Louisiana's congressional map and substantially rewrote the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, weakening protections against racial discrimination in voting. Now, let's pause here. When you actually hear substantially rewrote Section 2, that might sound like legal language, of course. But here is what it means in regular people language. I'm going to break it down. When it may become harder to challenge maps and voting systems that weaken Black voting power, you see that actually matters. Because if the legal tools used to fight voters' dilution are weakened, then communities may have fewer ways to defend themselves when maps are drawn against them. And this is where people need to understand this one thing or these few things. Rights do not protect themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Laws do not enforce themselves. Institutions do not automatically defend justice. People have to organize. Lawyers have to challenge. Communities actually have to pay attention. And voters actually have to understand what is happening before election day. And that's a really big thing that we got to work on as a community, brothers and sisters. My provokers. That's one thing that we got to all work on as a collective. So let's bring this into a real case. We talked about Alabama last week, right? All right. So Alabama has been at the center of major voting rights litigation over congressional maps. Civil rights group argued that Alabama's congressional map weakened Black voting power, giving Black voters too little opportunity to elect their candidates of their own choice. The ACLU actually reported that a 3-judge district court found Alabama's 2023 congressional map was actually tainted by institutional race-based discrimination, and that the court resonated a remedial map with 2 Black opportunity districts. Then the situation kept changing. The ACLU later reported that the Supreme Court actually granted Alabama to stay in the ongoing case, allowing the Alabama to use its 2023 congressional map for the 2026 elections. Excuse me. The ACLU said lower the court had found that the Alabama legislature intentionally discriminated against Black voters when it enacted the map only with one district where Black voters had an opportunity to elect candidates of their own choice. Now, I want to be really responsible right here, right? When there are legal arguments on both sides, some people argue that courts should not force states to draw districts based heavily on race. You see, some actually argue that race-conscious redistricting can conflict with many constitutional policies. And then you have some that argue that states should have more power over the election maps. But here is the question that we must not avoid, guys. If a state has a large Black population, but the maps consistently minimize Black voters' ability to elect candidates of their choice, what does that say about democracy, huh? And here is another question. At what point does race-neutral language become a cover for race-conscious impact? Because sometimes a policy does not have to say Black people to harm Black people. You see, on this platform, I know that we all can understand that impact matters, history matters, context matters, patterns matter. That is a serious political education. That is what serious political education actually requires, provokers. That's what I've been trying to get you guys to see all along. So, man, y'all gotta see, I'm a little stuffed up today. Okay, I can't be doing all this fussing. But hey, I gotta let y'all know something. So, there are actually people out there who might actually say, okay, but how does redistricting affect me? Let me tell you guys, for those of you who do not know, voting power affects school funding. It actually affects whether your neighborhoods gets investments or it actually gets neglect. It affects public transportation systems locally. It affects whether hospitals stay open. It affects affordable housing policies, right? It affects environmental justice. It affects policing. It actually affects the criminal justice forms. It affects our judges that we put in place. It affects prosecutors. And, well, it also affects the business contracts you sign, right? And it affects whether Black entrepreneurs have access to these public opportunities that we claim that we want, huh? It affects whether your community is seen as politically vulnerable or politically disposable. And I know a lot of you guys care about that. So when people say politics does not matter, I understand your frustration. Believe me, I do. But politics is already dealing with you day to day, even when you decide not to deal with the politics. Your rent is political. Your school boards are political. Your roads are political that we like to complain about. Your courthouse is political. Ladies and gentlemen, your tax dollars are political. Provokers, the zoning laws are political. Your business environment that you go to work to every day is political. And if Black people actually disconnect from political education, guess what? We leave decisions about our communities in the hands of people who may not have our interests at the heart. And that does not mean that we worship politicians. Let me be clear here. We do not need blind loyalty to no party, left, right, or middle. We need political literacy for our Black and brown babies, for our parents, for our brothers and sisters. We need accountability. We need organized communities. We need informed voters like you and me. We need local leadership. And then we also need that policy knowledge. We actually need to know the difference between being courted during campaign season and actually being respected after the election day. Tell me how serious that is. Tell me if I'm wrong, y'all. And then let's also talk about our young voters at hand. The youth vote actually matters, y'all. It was a certain time when I didn't even actually think that. But I'm starting to see that this is a very big thing here. You see, the Tufts Circle actually reported that nearly 49 million young people ages of 18 to 29 will be eligible to vote in the 2026 midterms. Now that right there is real power. But power without education can be manipulated. And we know that. I said power without education can be manipulated. And I'm not saying that to insult young people. I'm saying that because all of us have been manipulated politically at some point when we did not have enough information. And I know you guys know how that feels. Young voters need do not need more celebrity endorsements. They do not need more than the fear campaigns that are out there. They need more than this is the most important election of your lifetime every 2 to 4 years. They actually need to understand, what is it that Congress do? What